First, I have to be convinced, we have to be convinced, the team has to be convinced, the premiers have to be convinced that an agreement is worth the paper it's written on. And I think at the core of that is that the agreement recognizes the benefits, the very, very many benefits that trade with Canada brings, not just to Canadians, but to Americans. It's their self-interest. But it has to recognize, it has to be aligned, has to have provisions that reinforce, of course, but we will know when we see it. And I would say, we go in from Missouri, to use an American expression, on this. And with wide eyes, lots of options, rolling up our sleeves, doing the work. We're working on behalf of Canadians. We'll know it when we see it.
Okay, that's what you call kids politics speak. That's Mark Carney today talking about the agreement he's talking about, of course, is the one that he hopes to have and is supposed to have already with the United States. And the question of the day is, will Canada come to that table and speak with one voice on tariffs? James Mennie, what do you think? Hello, by the way.
Well, there's been a lot of politics speak, Sue, but the fact of the matter is, and his entire statement began with the sort of acknowledgement that you can't trust the word Donald Trump says, and his word, the so-called word, changes from day to day to day. And after a day of performative politics, whether it's on the part of Quebec Premier Christine Trochet, who says Quebec must have a seat at the table in these negotiations, and then quietly sort of saying, well, we're not, unlike all you other premiers, we're not going to open our borders to the transportation or the sale of alcoholic beverages, because it would take legislation, which of course is a load of crap, because no Quebec government will ever tolerate anybody else's booze being in Quebec. We have a monopoly here, and Quebec is the queen of monopolies. And then you have people like Doug Ford, who's in a lot of trouble in Ontario. I mean, we don't usually talk about Ontario politics, but he's surrounded there with all kinds of scandals in the making, and here he is coming across as Captain Canada. Everything we should, be ready to do anything. I'm crazy. I'll do it. I'll cut out. He once threatened to cut off electricity to the northern United States. And then you have people like Scott Moe and Danielle Smith. Scott Moe, Premier of Saskatchewan. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta. Basically saying, no, everyone, calm down now, please, because we have pretty good relations with the States. Because we're sending them the potash, we're sending them the energy. Which is interesting because these latest tariffs, threatened tariffs, which may or may not go into effect, do not affect potash or energy. It's just from the news. It was a lot of performing. At the end of the day, Carney's saying, you know what, let's keep our powder dry. It would be a very big mistake to react quickly because, as I mentioned yesterday, a lot can happen between now and I think it's like 29 days before these tariffs go into effect. And Donald Trump, who has a lot of problems of his own, ranging from, a war in Iran that he does not seem to be winning, and the Epstein files, which keep coming back over and over and over again, maybe he'll forget about talking about tariffs, although that was one, tactic of distraction that he used. But I just find it interesting when you look at this meeting of the so-called Council of the Federation. Essentially, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but you're saying that a lot of our system of government involves provincial premiers saying, "I'm in it for what I can get for my province," and that's it. It doesn't go beyond that.
And fair enough, though. I mean, that is what they're in it for, right?
We're a federation, right? And the fact is that if the idea that there would be a Canadian interest that overrides the interest of various provinces, basically that's anathema for a lot of these people. Although, as you, of all people, have discovered this week, a lot of people on the ground, a lot of actual tax-paying, ballot-casting people don't feel that way. They actually have been united by the excesses and the babbling of Donald Trump. But all that said, it's going to be very, very interesting, especially with Christine Trochet, who, as far as I'm concerned, is doing nothing more than limping and quacking. She'll be out of a job in October. She's not going to be Premier of Quebec. So all the sort of grand announcements she makes about having a seat at the table and Quebec will do A, B, and C. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We'll see what happens. But the fact is, and in this particular instance, I think he's right. Carney is right to say, everyone just calm down. In other words, shut up, and let's see what the next, weird set of babblings from Donald Trump will be, and we'll have to react to that. But also, if you look at the list, have you actually checked out the list of products that are covered?
It's actually hilarious and very random. But what I just wanted to say, James, is that, the thing about the provinces being unified, which is interesting, is that a lot of people are saying, okay, well, if we really want to fight with fire, then we need to use like energy. And energy is Quebec and Alberta. Both provinces have said, nah, we don't really want to play in that playground. So then what strategy does Carney have? If he cannot get that, the buy-in of those provinces.
Donald Trump does not have a single real idea in his head. All he does is react. A lot of people call him a bully, but the fact is he's a punk as well. In other words, he can't turn around and say, okay, we're going to do A, B, and C because of D, E, and F. No. It's always in reaction to what someone else is doing. Yeah. So the fact is, my understanding is what Carney said today is, don't give him an excuse. Don't give him some rope that he can use to turn into a speech that'll be picked up, on CNN and, look at me, I'm defending America's interests. Just be quiet. Let him keep yelling and see what happens when he runs out of breath. Because honestly, if you look at, and I know we don't have the time, but if you look at all the other factors that are playing in the States right now about Donald Trump and his role, his future role in the politics of the U.S.
Oh, yeah, the midterms coming up.
Midterms are coming up, and quite frankly, tariffs, trade talks, and trade relations with the rest of the world is at the bottom of his list. Not going to jail is at the top of his list. And that's a very definite possibility. Yeah. If he gets impeached, if the midterms, if Congress flips and he gets impeached, he's in a lot of trouble. And all of those, and we've had a little taste of it so far, but all of those, Republicans, those cultists who are applauding the great leader, they will be scurrying to provide, the authorities with their statements about how they were forced to do A, B, and C. So, this is the thing we have to keep in mind as it becomes more aware that on the one hand, yes, Donald Trump is dictating the agenda of our political timetable, but on the other hand, that agenda could change literally from hour to hour. So, yes, by all means, perform, Premier Carney, Premier Frechette, Premier Moe, Premier Smith, perform before the microphones, but realize that even by tomorrow, the situation may have totally changed. So this is where we are, and I hate to be the markets are tanking right now, except for energy, because of why? Not because of any trade relations, because Donald Trump has decided he figures the only way to win the war is more bombs, which apparently doesn't seem to be working. But he's in huge trouble, and you know what? It's only Thursday today, so who knows between now and the weekend where we're going to be.
Only Thursday. We've been talking about Donald Trump all week. It's the longest week in history.
I know, but in terms of the changes, and certainly in terms of the war in Iran, who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, this is the thing. He managed to get his funding for the war, but the fact is, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong with him saying every other day, "I'm going to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age," and then discovering, well, this tanker got hit and that tanker got hit, and we'll have to bring. Every day, his threats become broader and more threatening, if you will. But the fact is, il n'y a pas grand-chose qui a changé.
No, and to your point, he's threatened again a renewed bombing strategy on Iran. Yeah, because it's not working. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, James.
Demain.
Demain.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.